we just upload them unlisted to YouTube, so it's only people with the link who have access. So probably
Yes,
just you
yeah.
guys.
Okay.
But
Nice.
yeah,
Well, it's
so
nice to be able to go back. That's really
yeah.
nice. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, even though it'll probably clock out at like 40 minutes, which is too much for
Mm.
anyone to watch, you could just kind of fast forward. But I'm going to share my screen and just kind of go over the fact that we're going to be talking about Google Drive. The best way that I like to access Google Drive is through my email. So that's where I always start, though there are plenty of people who just go to the direct link, which would be drive.google.com. A lot of people do that, but I like going through the email so I know I'm in the right Google Drive.
Right.
Because you can see right here, this is a different picture than the email I was in, so it's a different email account. And there's nothing wrong with this drive, I just don't want to be in it. So I usually just go from my email, so it's a lot easier for me to know where I'm at. But if you aren't familiar, Google Drive is just like an online filing cabinet, pretty much. It's like you stick your documents in the online ether and kind of organize it from there. But the nice thing about it is that you can share it with people, you can live collaborate on things, and it makes it very easy to share like photos and videos and things like that. So you can always get like a link to anything you put in Google Drive, which is super nice to stick in your Moodle courses. So you just have a link to something. And you can share it with people directly so they can access it from their own Google Drive. So there's a couple different ways you could do that. Like I mentioned with the email, the best way to access Google Drive is with this little Google Apps icon. It's a waffle 3x3 dotted grid up in the top right. So if you're looking at your email and you click on that 3x3 grid, Drive is usually somewhere at the top. If it's not at the top, it's this triangular icon, so you could just kind of scroll down to see if it's there, but it's usually right towards the top. You just click on it and it opens up in a new tab, and it brings you right to a section that they call My Drive. So that's where it gets a little confusing when people say Google Drive and My Drive. My Drive is just a section of Google Drive. So it's where you go right from the beginning, and it's all the stuff that you have created, that you have uploaded, and that you have made a shortcut of from a different section. So it's kind of like your desktop in a way, if you're thinking about it that way. You have shortcuts to your internet browser, just like in Google Drive, you have shortcuts to different folders and different places. So it's kind of like your central hub where you can organize it the way you like. So that's kind of nice. You can see there.
I'm sorry, Riley. Do you store files here on this menu too?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can upload files, so you can keep them stored here on My Drive, and this is the section it would be in.
Great.
For sure. So a lot of people do use Google Drive for, if you're working at the office and at home, because you can access it wherever you have an internet connection. And that's even on your phone. So you can download like the Google Drive app and upload things from your phone, such as videos or photos or whatever. You can, work on any Google Docs that you have wherever you have internet. So it's kind of a nice central hub if you're not always in one place and you want to work on your items, in a free sort of manner.
I'm on a committee, on that IPEC committee. Is this where April would store things on My Drive, or is it Share With Me? What's the difference between My Drive and Share With Me?
Well, My Drive is very personal to you. So it's whatever you've uploaded and created yourself. But Shared With Me is anything that has been shared with you. So yeah, it's a big pile of things. If you go to yours, you'll probably see a bunch of stuff you don't recognize because it can be shared with you directly or indirectly. And an example of an indirect share is like our ETS website. It's a Google site, so everything on it is hosted in Google. So that means when you visit a web page with a bunch of documents on it, you've technically, those documents are technically shared with you. So then they get stuck in here. So that's why it's very fluid, I guess. But that's why the shortcut feature is so important, because shortcuts that you saw in My Drive, like an example would be this folder. It has that little arrow icon, so that indicates it's a shortcut. And shortcuts always come from shared with me because you can't
Oh,
organize anything in here. So it's kind of a
okay.
mess. Yeah.
Mm.
So like
Okay.
if you had a document that was shared with you that you want to put in my drive so you can organize it and know where it is, you would come into shared with me and right click on it. And there's a little feature called add shortcut to drive. And it doesn't take it out of here. It just gives you a shortcut in my drive so that it's easier for you to find. It's the same
Okay.
document. It doesn't make a copy. It just gives you a better access to it, essentially. So if I did that to this one, it lets you organize it right from here. So you could put it just generally in my drive so you don't have to pick a folder. But if you wanted to, you can just click the little arrow and then all of your folders appear. But just for the sake of brevity, I'll just click on my drive and add the shortcut to show you what it looks like. It has the little arrow like I mentioned. I just have to find it. There it is. So it has a little arrow
Okay.
pointing up. It's the shortcut, but it's the same exact document, just in a place that's easier for me. So that is a new feature, and that's really nice. Now, let's see. So I mentioned folders. There are two sections here. There is the folders at the top and the files at the bottom. It's kind of like when you look at your file explorer, like that little folder at the bottom of your computer. You have your folders at the top and then any documents underneath. So if you are more used to that kind of format of viewing folders and files, there's a different view that you can toggle up in the top right. So right now we're looking at what they call a grid view. So everything's kind of blocky. You can see previews of different documents, which I find very useful. But then if you click on this little bar graph looking icon, it changes it to list view where everything is just listed like you would see on your computer. So you have all your folders at the top and all your files that aren't organized beneath it. So this view actually gives you a couple more bits of details as you're looking at it. You have the owner, which is very important if you're sharing things with people frequently. So it tells you who the owner is. You can see when it's last modified, which is super useful. So like when it was last poked and prodded or people added text to it. And then you can see the file size of some things if you're interested in that. Though you'll notice a lot of dashes here. That's because anything like Google Docs or Google Sheets or Google Slides, those are all free in the sense that they don't have a file size, which is intriguing. It doesn't really matter that much, but I found that out yesterday and thought that was weird. It says Google Docs files are free. I don't know what that means, but I think it's just because it's cloud storage. It's very fluid. But this is definitely one way to look at your items, but I just prefer the grid view because I like seeing a little preview of my items before I go in, so I don't have to waste clicks. It's a personal preference, though. Another nice little thing that I want to mention is this little eye icon in a circle. This is the information/details pane that is toggleable, which is not a word. It's collapsible and you can bring it out. You can toggle it. It's toggleable. Essentially, when you click on it, it opens up a little square over here, and it wants you to select a file or a folder to see the details. So for example, if I clicked on this joining Bongo template, it brings it up over here on the right, and it tells me that it's a shortcut. It tells me where it is right now, which is in my drive, when it was modified and created, and by who, or by whom, and then the owner. So I'm not the owner of this. It's actually Kat. So it tells me all these things right here on the side, just so I don't get confused. Like, oh, is this actually mine? Nope, it's Kat's, but I can edit it. So that's, something that I know. But then there's also a cool aspect when you have things shared with other people. This information panel becomes super useful because, as you can see, I clicked on this academic continuity document and I can see two circles. The first one, if I hover over it, says that the workshops account is the owner, so I know that I own it. And then Kat can edit it. So I shared it with her directly and she has editing access. So I can tell just with a simple left click who has access to it, who owns it, and then I can see when it was modified, opened, and created as well.
Ronnie, could you just say that one more time? I want to write it down. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. About the information panel?
Yeah, about doing the shared documents and being able to edit back and forth, because that's really what would help me, I think, with doing office hours with my students.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
This would be super useful for you as well then, Deb, because when you click on this details button, it'll tell you what, it'll tell you who the document is shared with. So if you clicked on someone's paper that they shared with you, right?
Yeah.
And then on the right, in this details pane, it tells you who the owner is, so which student owns it, if their name isn't already in the title, and then what kind of access you have to edit it. So it's kind of a nice little snapshot of what the sharing permissions are. But there's other ways to do that, and we'll talk about those because that involves actually sharing with other people. So
Yeah.
this is just a snapshot.
Can I also just say to you that as long as I'm not in the classroom, I am off duty as a literature and grammar professional. So
Yeah.
any way you want to say anything is perfectly fine.
Yes. Exactly.
I feel like I'm on edge whenever I have an English professor in the call. I'm like, they taught me better than this, but
You know, when I went to get my PhD, my family stopped writing to me, and I called them and I said, "How come no one writes to me since I moved away?" And they said, "Well, everybody's afraid to write to you because you're teaching writing now." I thought, "Well, for Pete's sake,
come on, guys." You think I care?
Really?
That makes me feel so much better, though. You know, when you do these virtual things and you watch them back, you realize how many times you say and so.
Yes,
Oh,
exactly.
It's so annoying. Every time I
Exactly.
say it,
Yeah.
drives me
One
nuts.
of the things that you and Kat are good at, and I had it on a list of little things I wanted to ask you. You guys are very good at looking at the camera, so it looks like you're looking at me. And I've been practicing a little with my students' Hangouts and Gallery, practicing doing that. Now I look like I'm looking at you, right?
Yeah.
But are there any tricks to feeling comfortable doing that? Because I really feel like I'm looking at a dot of light, which is not the norm for teaching in the classroom.
Well, I'll say it's definitely easier when I have my screen shared because I don't want to look down at the screen the whole time, especially when I'm pausing to make a note of something. I always default right back to the camera. But if I see your faces, I'm looking at your faces, I'm looking at myself in the top right corner, like it's a mess. So I need to share my screen in order to feel comfortable looking at that circle because it's like a homing point essentially.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Yeah. I was
And
thinking
some people
about
put little creatures behind it or something, like a little post-it that says "Look here," so no one can see it but you.
I was thinking about putting up some of the photos my students had sent to me and taping it to the top right above the light so I could imagine that I was talking to people rather than
I like that. That's so good.
Yeah, but you are good at it, and Kat is good at it, and it really makes a difference when I'm on the receiving end to have the person who's talking, appearing to look at me, and I'm sure that'll make a difference in my classes too, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Because even in Zoom, there's still a little picture of you as you're sharing your screen. So it's important to kind of like make that connection, though sometimes it's easy to forget because that light is the only thing indicating that that camera is on. And it's hard to find where that camera actually is because everything's so dark in that little banner up there. But I've also noticed with all the gesticulations, like sometimes I do them down here where no one can see them, and then I'll do them in front of my face. I'm not sure if it's helping.
That's a good point.
You know?
Oh, wow. Oh, I gotta make a note. Hand movement should be above the keyboard.
Right? Above the keyboard, but only on either quadrant, like quadrants to the side of your face, not down here.
Oh, yes.
You know what I mean?
That's good.
It's almost like an acrobatic thing. You have to remember where you're at, spatial awareness, all this stuff.
Yes.
A lot to keep in mind. I don't envy you guys for having to do it multiple times a week. I mean, I guess technically I have to too, but still.
We'll get good at it if we do it 2 or 3 or 5 times a week for months, right? By January, we should be much better at it.
Oh, yeah. You'll have it, like, it'll be a hard time to go back in person because you're looking for the camera.
I think I'll love it. I miss it so much already. I know. Patricia, have you ever taught online like this before? Patricia, have you ever taught online?
No. Oh, God, no.
Yeah.
No, it's been in person. So this is, new, very new.
challenge.
Yeah, it's hard
Yeah.
for nursing because I'm a nurse, and it's hard to show skills and do things doing this. OB is my specialty, and the thing is, talking about it and actually doing it, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
I'll just take one more minute to talk about something that's not technological, if you don't mind. Anytime I
Absolutely
meet anybody who's in a medical profession, I always have to say this. You do something the likes of which no other profession does. You literally improve the quality of other people's lives. Is there any better thing anyone could do with their lives? That's so neat. That's what
thank
you
you.
do, Patricia.
Yes,
So cool.
thank you.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
nice.
it's really
Thank you.
neat. Thank you.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
And now
always
that's
so impressed.
immortalized.
Pardon me?
Now it's immortalized in the recording too.
I forgot we were recording.
Yeah.
That's a good thing, though. Everybody
great
should have a very
thing.
high sensibility concerning the appreciation for everybody in any kind of medical field.
Exactly.
I often
Exactly.
feel that nurses especially are the unsung heroes of medicine. They define the quality of your experience if you ever go into the hospital. And yet I really think they're unsung for their heroism. So, okay, well, it's neat
I
you're
agree
doing
with
that. I'll never.
Oh, thank you.
That was really wholesome.
Yeah.
I like that. And now to something less wholesome, I guess. It's not bad. It's just Google Drive. Not as, life-changing. But we did want to talk about sharing. But before I go on to that, I mentioned about creating and uploading files. So I'll just show you how to do that if you were interested in doing that. If you want to upload a file, you just click on New, and then there's a File Upload button, and it just brings up your File Explorer like normal, and you look for what you're looking for, and then you kind of double click on it. It starts a little upload, and I uploaded this before, apparently. So apparently it lets you know about that too. So it uploaded it as a new version, which is very interesting. And I don't know what to make of that, but it happened. So I uploaded a file. It's now here in my drive. And when you upload a file, it's kind of a bit different than creating one. Uploading a file involves like you can double click on it to just preview it. Whereas if you create a file, you double click it to open it and then edit it. But the nice thing about the corresponding software to like Google Docs, Sheets, and Slides, and that corresponding software would be Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, is that you can edit Word documents in Google Docs, you can edit Excel sheets in Google Sheets, and PowerPoint presentations in Google Slides. So you'll always get this button at the top that says Open with Google Docs, and then when you do that, it opens up in a new tab, and then you're editing it as if you created a Google Doc. So that's a new feature too, that you can edit these Microsoft Office files in their Google equivalents, which is really nice, especially for students uploading papers. They don't have to write it in Google Docs. They could just upload it to Google Drive, and then you can edit it in Google Docs. No sweat. So this would actually be a good example of something to share because I uploaded this Word doc and, maybe I want to share it with somebody and get their feedback on it. So then I would click the share button right here at the top. It's bright blue, and right now it has a lock on because it says it's private to only me. So I'm the only one who has access to it right now until I click this button, and then I can set who has access to it.
This is where I did wrong. I did this already and it was wrong. Oh my God.
Well, there is another way to do it. You can right click files and share from there too.
Okay.
So there are two ways to share.
But I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, well, no worries because I'll explain it. Because there's two ways you can do it. There is the sharing directly method with people and groups. So that would be when you're entering specific emails. If you have contact groups, like for your classes, you could put those groups in here. But otherwise, this is just your very specific sharing with people and groups. So if I wanted to add you both to this, I can just type in your names, and it kind of guesses already who I'm talking about. And then I have both your names here. When you start adding names, you get the option to notify people, which just sends them an email that they have access to this file. I think that's always a nice courtesy instead of just shadow sharing it with people. So they still get it, but they don't know they have it, you know, that kind of thing. So I always like sending the courtesy email. You can include a message. Anything really works here. But the biggest part of Google sharing is this little permissions drop down here. So by default, if you're adding specific people, they usually put them in as editors, which means they have full creative control of this document. They can pretty much do whatever they want to it, just like you can. So that is a blessing and a curse depending on what you want from your collaborators. The other types are a little bit different, obviously. They have less accessibility in a way. So commenter types are essentially like your track changes in Word. So if you ever use that, it's pretty much the same exact idea. When you turn track changes on, it makes everything that you type like a bright red to indicate that it's different than what the original document had. So any commenters that you have, whatever they type on the document instantly comes up as a comment and something that the document owner can then accept or reject. So this is great for peer review and things like that, because the document owner can kind of vet what gets added to the document and what gets rejected. And they can also make comments responding to the different suggestions, whether it's positive or negative. So that's really nice as well. I've always liked the commenter type because you can't do anything bad to the document. You're just making suggestions. So that's always very nice.
Yeah, that's nice.
And the viewer is pretty self-explanatory. They just see it. They can't do anything else to it.
Oh, I think that's what I did.
Oh yeah, for the Moodle documents you sent, Pat, or was it something else?
Yeah, the Moodle document. Yeah. Boy, did I get the students emailing me like, I can't because they're going to childbirth education and they couldn't put their name in there.
Oh, geez.
So they were like, I can't put my name in there. I had so many emails that night. It was like, and I did, of course I don't. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
That's stressful.
It is. Yeah, because I feel bad for them. I know that it's hard for them to do it online. I know it because I do it. It's hard for me. So.
Yeah. I mean, I totally understand.
And
but the nice thing is, it's a pain. Like the nice thing is though about this Google sharing is that you can change it at any time. So if you made a mistake and you added someone as a different type of editor, like you made them a viewer instead of an editor, you can always come back in and change it. So there's nothing set in stone. As long as you're the document owner, you can do anything to it.
Okay.
So I'm going to actually add you both as commenters so you can see what it looks like, especially if you're going to be using something like this. But before I send these out, I just want to make note of this little gear icon when you're sharing with specific people. If you click on it, it tells you something about editors, viewers, and commenters. So there's this default setting that editors can change permissions and share, which means they pretty much have co-ownership of the document. So if you were sharing editing access with someone and you didn't want them to add other people or share it around, you can just uncheck that, and editors can just make edits to the document, but they can't share it out. And then this little default for viewers and commenters, it enables them to download, print, and copy the file that you're sending. But if it's something you don't want them to download, print, or copy, you could always uncheck that. That's kind of more like restrictive and doesn't usually, get changed. Usually people keep these as they are, but these are options that you have if you want to get a little more restrictive with your permissions.
Okay.
Are there any questions so far?
No.
I don't think so, but it's like I always say to you, Riley, I need to practice a little bit.
Me too.
Then I often have questions once I try it out on my own.
Yeah.
Makes sense. But I will send these both to you so that you will get an email and you'll see what that email looks like when you share it out with people.
Cool.
So you'll get the email and it'll tell you what the file is and what kind of access you have to it. So gives you the whole 9 yards. And if you want to access that and come into this document, that's totally up to you.
Okay.
But there is another sharing aspect I wanted to show you guys. I told you there's an indirect and a direct way to share with people. The direct way is what we just talked about, and the indirect way is with a link. And I think, Pat, this is what you did, which is totally fine as well. This is definitely a good way to do it for the Moodle classes, just so you don't have to add everyone's names, but obviously that's an option too. So this get link option, you just have to click on it to come down to it. It gives you a link that you can use to access this document. So by default, the link is restricted to anyone that you added up in this top part. So if I sent out this link to everybody at the campus, only Deb, Pat, and myself would be able to open it because we're the only ones involved in the document. So that's when you change the audience here to Marywood University Gmail if you want to be, if you want to enable faculty and staff to open this. So this does not pertain to students at all, which is a little misleading because it says Marywood University, but it only pertains to anyone at Marywood with that maryu.marywood.edu email. So just so you know that, if you set this and you want students to open it, they're not going to be able to. The only way students can open it is if you do anyone with the link, which I know sounds a little scary because it is technically public then. And I say technically because the link can be shared, you know, like people can just send a link places, but odds are they're probably not going to, you know, like no one's sending around their paper link to just the most random people. But this is the only way to get students to view this without adding them directly. So anyone with the link includes everybody, including students. Marywood University Gmail is only faculty, staff at Marywood, and restricted is only the people who were added specifically. So with these links, you have an audience, but you also have the permissions that you had from before. So you can make anyone with the link a commenter, anyone with the link an editor, or just a viewer. So if I made people comments, or commenters rather, it would give you that little descriptive text to kind of drive home that they are commenters. And then if I made them editors, anyone with the link can edit it. So those are things to keep in mind. And if you ever want to turn off the link, like you don't want it to be available to everyone, you just kind of change that back to restricted. So it's kind of a thing you can change at any time. It's very fluid, but it's the indirect way to share with people. And because I shared with both of you, you're now in the list of people that I've shared with on this document. And this is something you can access at any time just by clicking that share button. And you can see that those drop downs for permissions are still there. So if I wanted to change Deb from a commenter to an editor, I can do that. If I wanted to change Pat from a commenter to the owner, I can make her the owner. Like I can do whatever I want because I'm the owner. So you can remove them, change their access, and so on. So you can always go back and take people out, give them better access, or just leave it as is. Okay. So are there any questions about those things?
Neat, you can do that kind of thing.
Yeah, it is neat. It is neat.
It's pretty cool. But say you were in another person's document coming in to edit. So there are a couple ways that you can go about doing it. If you are an editor on someone else's document, like Deb, I'm not sure if you would be an editor or a commenter on someone's file, but either way, it's kind of the same. The commenter is just when you, like, let me see, the best way to explain this. When you're an editor, you can change the editing mode at any time, so you can still act as a commenter. You pretty much just have that ability. It's this little pencil icon. I'll zoom in on it a little bit. It's all the way in the top right under the share button, and you can change it from editing directly to suggesting, which is like track changes, and then you could just view it if you want to read it. So if I changed it to suggesting, anything I then type is a comment. So then the document owner and anyone else who has access to it sees it as a comment on the side. You can accept it or reject it. You can reply to it. And then, you know, kind of start a conversation over here on the right, which is kind of cool. But if you wanted to edit directly, you just kind of change that little mode to editing, and then everything is normal. And you can see that suggestions are a different color altogether, so you could still tell what was added from someone else in a suggesting sort of format. And you could also see as I'm hovering over the boundary between the paper and the background, there's a little comment box. So at any time, if you want to just make a comment on something instead of adding directly to the document, you can just kind of hover and click on that comment button, and it takes whatever line you were kind of hovering next to, it highlights it all, and then you can make a comment about that section. And it highlights it in yellow so that you can tell what you're commenting on. So then when you type your comment, you paste it, and they can either resolve it or hide the discussion. Really depends on what you want to do there.
Would you do that? I'm sorry, would you do that what you just did again? Because I was writing down, hover over the right margin. Just say that last sentence that you said. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So when you're going through the document, it kind of stops at every line in the document or every section. So if I wanted to highlight this entire number 5, I could just kind of hover next to it here at the margin and click on it, and it just highlights that line number 5 for me, which is really nice. There's also a way to do it more specifically, because it's more often the case that you want to highlight a specific word and like call out word choice, or maybe even a phrase and just say, I don't know about that. So if you wanted to get specific about it, you can just highlight like you do normally, you left click and you drag it. And then there's a little comment box up in the top. It's about in the middle of your Google Doc, and it says add comment. And then you could just add a comment about that specific thing that you highlighted. So you don't have to highlight the whole section. You could just highlight a phrase or a word and then come up here to that little comment button. And if you're into keyboard, combinations, if you like Control-C for copy and things like that, apparently the keys for this one are Control-Alt-M, which I will never remember. But if you're going to comment a lot,
I will.
Nice. But it's there if you want it, but there's a button which I much more appreciate.
Yeah.
So another nice thing about these comments, even if the owner gets rid of them and they're gone forever, so you think they're gone forever, but they are not. If you click on this little comment history button next to the share button, it shows you all of the comment history. So it's never gone. You may think it is, but it is not. So that's pretty cool too, in case people are like, oh, I didn't see the comment. You can see that it was there, and if someone marked it resolved. So, kind of track it.
Yeah.
One of my favorite features, and it's totally geeky to say that I have a favorite feature in Google Docs, but the favorite feature that I have is the version history, which is the coolest thing I've ever seen. So say I have this document that I wrote really weird things on, like is a comment, and then everything is normal. I don't want that in here, but I don't really want to go through and delete it either, because I'm entirely too lazy. So if I click on this, text that says last edit was made, you can see it says open version history. So I can click on that, and it opens the history of my document. So I have the current version, which has these additions, and it tells me who made them. And then if I click on this one, it's a previous version where things were changed. So it doesn't have that weird text that I had. So I could just restore that version. And then, it looks a little weird here in the formatting. So maybe I wouldn't do this one. But, it got rid of my text and it went back to a time where it was unchanged. So you can always restore a previous version of your document, which is really nice. Especially if you accidentally put editing access on everyone and they just went to town on the document and just screwed it up, you could always go back in time. I've never seen that happen. Oh my goodness. Oh, what was that, Pat?
What was that under? That when you did that, what does it say?
Oh, it's always going to be this text that says last edit.
Okay,
and when you hover over it, it says open version history.
Thank you.
So that's pretty much the rundown of how to share a Google Doc, how to access one, and the kind of features you have as you share things. And I will just note, in case you weren't aware, everything you change in Google Docs is saved automatically, so you don't really have to worry. Even if you have like spotty internet, it kind of edits as soon as you type something. It's saving that letter as you're typing a word. Like it's that good. So it's really nice. You don't have to worry about it.
that was my question. When I was working in Google Docs or trying to work in it, I was looking for the save button. I was
Yeah.
like, how do I save this? Because I wrote, because I was writing all these for childbirth. And I thought, how do you save it? And it just saves, right?
Yeah.
I
And you
mean,
can tell because there's a little cloud icon right here next to the docx, and it says all changes saved to Drive. So every time you
Okay.
change something, it's saving. And I'm one of those people who saves after every word I write because I've been burned too many times.
Yes,
So I'm still
yes.
hitting Control S every time I finish a sentence, but you don't need to in Google Docs, which is
Okay.
nice.
That's nice.
Yes, that is.
And you can even fool your friends. If you don't want them to know you worked in Google Docs, you can always click on File and then download it as a Word doc and send it out that way.
Oh,
So they don't have to know that it was a Google Doc. Not that people care anymore. It's not really stigmatized in any way. But if it's better for someone to have a Word doc or even a PDF, you could always download it as those file types. And same for like Google Sheets, you can download it as an Excel sheet, and you can download slides to PowerPoint too. So you have those options.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Do you guys have any questions or anything else you want to look at a little closely?
How long did it take you to learn all this stuff?
A lot of exposure, I think. And it's always changing, which is cool and also very frustrating because you think you have a handle on something and then they change something or add a new feature. You're like, oh, dang it.
I could see that.
More to learn.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I admire you guys for knowing all
I
of
do
this.
too. I do too.
Well, thank you.
Really.
It is, it's kind of fun because I already had to know this stuff for school initially, and then you kind of just expand on it. But it's kind of fun in a way until it's like the week before school and everyone's stressed out.
Exactly.
And,
Exactly. Yes.
But otherwise, it's pretty fun.
Neat. Cool.
But yeah, trying to think if there's anything else that I missed. I didn't really go over like file creation at all, but that's in the new button over here on the left. You can create your folders from here. So anything you see here in the folder section, I pretty much created those just from here. You just have to put a name on them and then you create the folder. And any Google Docs, Sheets, and Slides are over here. You could just create one directly from Drive. I know there are specific apps, like in the Google Apps menu, that people use instead. Like, for example, I'll go back to my email to show you. Up here, they have Docs, Sheets, and Slides all right here. So people just usually go to those instead. And it does look different. So if I clicked on Google Docs from the email, I get this sort of window, which just shows me all of my Google Docs and nothing else. And that's cool if you just want to look at your documents. It kind of filters it out in that way. But just know that anything you create from Google Docs here, like in its own app, still lives in Google Drive. So it's all living in Drive. I usually just access everything from Drive so it's easier, but some people do use the individual apps to create their different files. So,
you should use Drive for everything then when you're creating then?
I usually do, except for Google Forms. If you're making a survey, I usually just go right into Forms because it's a little bit different.
Okay.
But for the main three, like Docs, Sheets, and Slides, I use Google Drive just because I think it's easier, so I know where everything is. But it's a personal preference for sure.
What does Forms show? Is that if you're doing like doodle polls and stuff? Or no?
It could be. It's essentially just surveys. It could be like assessments, worksheets. It could pretty much be whatever you want it to be. We usually use them for surveys. I know a lot of people have been using like pre-semester surveys to send out to their students to kind of get a read on how everyone is. I think they've been using Google Forms for those. They're just pretty informal. And they're nice.
I like it for like midterm. Like you see how people are doing a midterm survey, or how am I doing?
Right, yeah.
So these are right on my forms. When I click on that little icon thing, that waffle
thing.
when
you click on the little waffle icon, it's right there at the bottom. It's
okay.
purple.
Well, that's something new I never knew about. I was wondering where they got those forms.
Yeah, and we have documentation on that too if you ever wanted to look into it, because they have different like question types. You can send it out and get the responses right back in your form, so you can see like charts and pie graphs and things like that. It's really cool.
Yeah.
And it's all
Cool.
free too, which is nice.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
mhm. I think there was one more thing I wanted to mention about sharing that I just remembered. If you had a folder, you can also share folders, and you
I
can
don't know how
tell.
to even make a folder.
Oh
Do you
yeah,
know how to make a folder, Deb?
Well, I do
I
on
don't know.
my computer. It's embarrassingly easy.
Oh, see, well, that's good. No.
I have a friend, now we communicate by phone, but she's a computer whiz. So I've been on the phone with her for months. And I said to her, well, I have all these files and I like to put them in folders. And so she
Yes.
said, well, tell me if I'm right, Raleigh. Click the right side of your mouse, right? And you get a menu that comes up. Go down to the selection new. And if you click new, then you get a whole bunch of other selections in a new menu. And one of them is folder. So right click your mouse, the menu opens, click new, and then you'll see another menu pop up and click folder. And then poof, yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah, like if I click on my desktop and right click, there's that new right there, and then folder. There it is.
And how do you put stuff in the folder? Just click on it and put stuff in it?
Well,
you
can.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I've been using my desktop lately, so I just saved files to my desktop, and then I just drag that file into the folder.
Oh, how neat. Okay.
Yeah, that's probably the easiest way to do it if you had your stuff on your desktop.
Okay.
How do you do it if it's in your documents part of your
Oh
computer?
yeah. So let's see. If you had the folder on your desktop and you wanted to get stuff in from documents, I think the best way to do that is to go to your file explorer. Now I have mine down here in my taskbar, but not everyone does. So if you see this little folder icon that says File Explorer, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, you can click on My Computer or This PC if you see that on your desktop. For some reason, I don't have that on my desktop. I'm not sure why. So I think if you went to go search or something, File Explorer is there. It's technically like an app in Windows 10, so you could find it there. But I usually click on that. It opens up smaller than the desktop, so I kind of drag it to where I can see both the folder and the File Explorer. And I open up Documents and kind of just drag it. Oops, not all those, just one. Drag it into there, and it's done.
See
That's
that?
so cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Look at all we learned today, Deb.
I know.
Honest to God. Yeah.
This is great.
It's the funniest thing. Every time I learn even the smallest new thing, I feel such a sense of accomplishment.
Exactly.
I think it has done me a lot of good as an instructor to be in the student's shoes, to remember what it is like for students who maybe don't know anything about the subject area they've come into your class to learn about. And that is always a good thing. To know more about your audience is always better than knowing less. And it's easy to forget when you've been a teacher a very long time. So I found this a rewarding experience in various ways.
Yeah, it's awesome that you guys are getting stuff out of this.
Yeah,
even
we
the
are,
little
Riley.
things.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. In Google Drive with the folders, it's kind of similar. Yeah, I guess you could. You could use the right side of your mouse and just click New Folder. So that was new to me. I just tried it and it worked. So, but usually I click on the New button and click Folder. And then you have to name it right off the bat. And click Create, and it just kind of sticks it right up here.
Oh,
so, yeah, and then it's the same sort of process like as you would use on your PC. If you want to drag something in there, you just click it and drag it up and release it, and it's in. So
that's neat.
That is. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I don't think it'll be too often that you share a folder, but it's the same sort of thing as when you share a document. It's just that the sharing permissions trickle down. So if you had subfolders within that folder, it shares everything within the folder, including subfolders and anything in them. So it's a quick way to get like a sharing link or to share specifically with other people a whole bunch of things at once. So
Okay. Well, that's good to know because Teresa does have a folder, and don't share it because I didn't know how. But
yeah.
she wants us to share stuff like ideas, like for the fall, put it in my folder. And I'm thinking, well, how do you do
Oh,
that?
okay.
How do
Well,
I do
that's interesting because if she set it up for you and shared it with you, that means whatever you put in that folder, she's going to get anyway. As
Oh,
long
okay.
as, yeah.
Okay.
So
All
it's kind
right.
of automatic, which is
Okay. Well,
pretty
I didn't
cool as
know.
well. Mhm.
Yeah. Well, that's
Like
good
if
to know.
I,
Now I'll put stuff in.
yeah, and it should just directly share with her. You can tell if it's shared with someone else with that little person icon on it. So if there's a little person, that means that it's shared with someone else. So if I clicked on this folder, just a simple
Okay.
left click, and use that details pane, I can
Oh,
see
okay.
that I shared it with people. So you can see if she
Oh,
has it
okay.
shared with you.
All right.
And with the folders, they only have two different sharing types. It's viewer, so anyone who you share it with as a viewer can just look at the folder, and then editor. So there's no comment or view on folders. The editor can then organize, add, and edit files. So they kind of have like creative control, as I've said in the past. But you
Okay.
can kind of tell when you look at it, it tells you exactly what it's going to do. It can organize, add, and edit files if they're editors. So, Pat, you're
Mhm.
probably an editor of that folder, so you can add your own files.
Okay. All
So
right.
that's what I'm
Thanks.
thinking.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But, yeah.
Wow.
Is there anything else you guys wanted to talk about that I didn't get to, or any questions?
No,
I think I need to process what you told us so far.
I know it's been a
Yeah.
lot.
What do you think, Patricia?
yeah, I agree with you, Deb. Yeah, I need to just play around with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
Then I will stop the recording just so you don't have a million minutes to look